morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Finding New Markets, Wholesale, Cooperatives, and Beyond, hosted by the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture. My name is Michelle Spencer. I'm Membership Director with Pasa. This is one webinar in a series of 4 marketing-related webinars we are offering over the next several weeks, which are supported by a specialty crop block grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. You can learn more about other upcoming webinars and all of PASA's upcoming events on our website at pasafarming.org. I just want to make a few introductions and then a few housekeeping notes, and then I'll turn it over to our presenters. So along with myself, I also want to introduce Tracy Raymond. Tracy has been working for PASA over the last several months on the specialty crop block grant I mentioned, and was key in pulling together these series of webinars. So thank you, Tracy, for that, and she'll be helping with our question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. Brian, if you can advance to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. You should see a panel over on the upper right corner of your screen. All attendees are currently listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you do prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane, and then dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit questions by typing those into the questions pane of the control panel. You can send your questions in at any time during today's presentation. We will collect all of these and address them during the question and answer session at the end of the webinar. In the event that we don't have enough time to address all the questions, we will follow up via email as well to make sure everyone's questions have been addressed. This session is being recorded and will be posted on PASA's YouTube page for future viewing, and a link will be sent to all attendees who have pre-registered. There will also be a short survey sent to you after the presentation, and we would appreciate everyone providing input. This webinar system is fairly new to PASA, so we are eager to learn feedback about that, and also in terms of the content of the presentation. Because again, we are doing these as part of a grant project, so it's always good to get feedback regarding the content. There are also a few documents provided on the right-hand side of your screen. In that pane, there's a section called Handouts. There are 4 handouts available that you can actually download during this presentation. And if you have any trouble with that, just let us know by sending a message in the chat, and we will also send those out after the presentation as an attachment in case folks would like them that way as well. So now I'd like to introduce our presenters. Brian Moyer will be offering the first segment of this presentation with Peggy Fogarty to follow. Brian is currently a program assistant with Penn State Extension in Lehigh County. His areas of expertise are direct-to-consumer marketing, poultry and meat regulations, and farmers markets. He is also author of the Farmer's Guide to Processing and Selling Meat or Poultry, which can be found on the Penn State Extension website. Peggy Fogarty is the Executive Director of the Keystone Development Center. She is responsible for providing a broad range of economic, marketing, and organizational development services to groups and organizations. She has a deep background in cooperative development and was instrumental in the startup of the Lancaster Farm Fresh Cooperative here in Pennsylvania. So welcome to both Peggy and Brian, and now I will turn things over to Brian.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everybody. And just one quick correction: I did not write the guide to the Farmer's Guide to raising and selling meat and poultry. I edited it and I updated it in 2011, but my colleague John Barry actually wrote the guide. But anyway, I'm happy to be with you all this morning. I think this is kind of a timely topic and one I spend a lot of time on recently, in that in recent years, I think a lot of farmers, and maybe a lot of you are in the same position, in that we're seeing there's more opportunities being opened up to us to sell our products. I would say, argue that maybe 10, 15 years ago, we had maybe two options if we were small to medium-sized farms, is that we were going to sell direct to the consumer, either at our farm, at a farmer's market, or through some CSA model. Now we have various online avenues opening up. The wholesale market, the retail markets are interested in having more local food, and plus we don't have any more time in our day to try to maybe do any more direct marketing than we're already doing, but we still need to grow our businesses. So what I hope to share with you this morning is just some options, just kind of touch the surface of some options of some wholesale marketing that maybe you can think about for your farm business, and then after that I'll go turn it over to Peggy, and she's going to talk about in more depth on cooperative models, which of course there's been a lot of interest in recent times. So to start off with, like I said, why consider wholesale? Direct-to-consumer sales only rose 5.5% between 2007 and 2012, and that's according to a report done on the local and regional food systems done by the USDA. Does that mean that we're leveling off? Some might seem to think so, but I also think that there's just more options and more ways for people who are thinking about getting local food or looking for it in their regular retail outlets. It's also a way of diversifying your marketing. As much as we all like to have our farms as diversified as possible to spread out our risk, thinking about our marketing the same way. I never wanted to have any customer to be more than 20% of my gross sales, and I think that's kind of a healthy way to think about it. So in other words, customers come and go, whether they're direct to consumer outlets or wholesale outlets, opportunities come and go. And if it goes, we don't necessarily want it to hurt our business that much. So thinking of this as maybe adding on to your already diversified market channels as just another market channel. So some channels we can think about, and the ones we're going to explore here this morning: restaurants, retailers, distributors, produce auctions, processors, and produce brokers. And then also at the very end, I'm going to talk a little bit about food hubs. So all of the wholesale outlets, they have certain expectations. They're going to expect high quality, clean product. There's going to be sorting and sizing requirements, pack standards for packing the product, and consistency of the quality of these qualities, every delivery time. And also very important that we have clean and clear communication with our wholesale customers. They're going to rely on that. Any confusion is just going to be an unhealthy relationship with our customer. Some may require that you have liability insurance. Now, if you're already selling at farmers markets or maybe even on-farm market, you probably already have some form of that. But what are the requirements in the wholesale avenue? Does it going to require a higher liability insurance? It's good to find these things out. What are our refrigeration requirements? How are we managing the cold chain from when we harvest from the field, from the pack house, and getting it all the way to the customer? What are those cold chain requirements? And does those customers require GAP certification, good agricultural practices? So looking at retailers, and I'm looking at this as from a direct to retailer. So we're not talking about distributor or a broker in this case, that maybe you've developed a relationship with some small local retailers in your community. So it could be a little more profitable because we're bypassing that middle person, but it is still a wholesale outlet. And I do speak to some farmers who confuse that with selling direct because they're selling direct to the retail, but understanding that that is still a wholesale outlet is going to make all the difference in what your profitability should be. You know, is that something your business can handle? Is that wholesale, or do we need the higher food dollar of the direct to consumer sales? So the opportunities are out there, particularly in some specialty crop items, you know, things that were maybe growing not on the scale of some larger producers, and not for the larger market, but maybe it really fits for specific communities, and maybe it's some ethnic markets and some of those retail outlets for crops that they're looking for that they can't find in their regular grocery store. The retail's reputation is on the line. They're the face to the consumer, so that's where coming into that clean, quality, and consistent product that they're relying on us for, so we have to be reliable. Like I said, to deliver a consistently high quality product and be on time with deliveries. If it's any certain size of a retailer, they schedule slots because maybe they only have so many dock openings that maybe they can unload a truck, and they're scheduling those deliveries at specific times for those trucks to keep coming and going. If you miss that slot, you may sit there all day waiting to unload with your product deteriorating in the back of the truck. So that is really critical. Anything will make a retailer unhappy, it is late deliveries. Restaurants, and yes, I consider restaurants a wholesale market because there again, we're not delivering it for the end user. Ultimately, the chef is doing that, but it may require some frequent deliveries. Storage may be a problem for some restaurants. Because of that, you may require more deliveries. And also, the turnover rate of restaurants is fairly high. Not so much maybe the business itself, but also chefs. Chefs are creative people. They like to move around. So it's not uncommon to show up with a delivery and find a new chef they're working with who doesn't know you at all or why you're bringing this product here. So maintaining those relationships, if you can develop a good way of working with those for that outlet, can be very beneficial for you. But as you may or may not know, chefs don't keep the same time that the farming community keeps. Generally, it's going to be different hours because they're working later. For me, I always found that the most ideal time of trying to reach a chef was something like 2 in the afternoon. If they're doing a lunch, the lunch is over with. It's just before they're prepping for the dinner rush, and that's more likely when you're going to be able to talk with them to find out what they need for that week. So finding the best way to communicate with the chef is always important as well. Whether it is email, maybe it's even as simple as a text message, but we need a way to constantly communicate with them so we can service their business. So let's talk a little bit about produce auctions. Produce auctions, I think had a bad rap for a long time. There's some misnomers about produce auctions, but it is a different market today than it was even 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And the fact, one could argue that it does kind of serve a local market, at least the ones in my area, or the local farming communities around that area who are selling to other retail farm markets to offer more product at their own farm market stands. And so that being what it is, they're also looking for high quality product. They're looking for a consistent product. And so the way to work farmers market auctions is not taking what you have left over and selling it occasionally is not going to be necessarily a successful route to do that. And maybe some of you have already experienced that. What it does require is a commitment to that market channel. If you're growing product that you think you could move through a produce auction to have some kind of regular cash flow through the season on that, granted that there's ups and downs through the season as product becomes more available You know, if you're early with tomatoes, that's great. If you're coming in mid-season when everybody's got tomatoes, it's not so great. And maybe holding on towards the end of the season when people are dropped off from bringing tomatoes, you can do well also. But it's a commitment to that through that entire wave of the product season. Like I said, primary customers, on-farm markets, some produce wholesalers. Maybe that's what some of the auctions I've seen. Like I said, in my local auction, I see it's mostly on-farm markets surrounding. So here in southeastern PA, you know, I can think about those on-farm markets there, but also goes up through the farms from the Poconos come down, and some from New Jersey will actually come over to hit the produce auction here in Kutztown. It's and it's those that the farmers that I work with in the Kutztown market that are with that, who primarily grow for that produce auction, are very, very happy with it. It seems to be growing every season. There seems to be more and more customers who are purchasing there. But it does ultimately have developing a relationship. The buyers get to know the growers, and the growers get to know the buyers, and they kind of accommodate one another for what they bring to the auction. So each grower kind of gets its own reputation for certain products. I know there's some that just specialize in broccoli and cauliflower, and they're known for that. And his son does high tunnel tomatoes, and he's really known for that. And so consequently, they do very well at the market, at the auction, I mean. So like I said, keys to success on that is a commitment to the market, consistent quality product, and also what are the packing guidelines for the produce auction. All the auctions do have their own packing standards that have to be met. So let's look at produce distributors. Of course, they're going to handle advantages. They're going to handle large volumes of product, and maybe there's 3 or 4 products that we produce that we can do consistently on a larger scale, that we can have a consistent quality product that allows us to add to the cash flow of our business without taking a whole lot more of our time in marketing that we necessarily don't have. Some may even do contract for a particular product, especially if it's a specialty product. They will contract with producers for. Some considerations, of course, it's going to be a lower price per unit than if we're selling directly to the consumer, but we're going to sell a lot more of it. We need to find out what the billing period is. Can we live with a 30-day or 60-day billing period? That might be how that particular distributor runs, but that may not be good for our business. But if it is, we need to know that in advance. What are the USDA pack standard and grade requirements we're going to need to follow that the distributor adheres to? And really important, we need well-organized invoicing and record keeping. So if we're moving product every week through these through a local distributor, we need to keep a record of it so we make sure we're getting our payments what's due to us, and have an inventory of what has come and gone from our farm. So lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about food hubs. And this is a definition that actually is from the USDA. If I can read it, because my other thing here is blocking me a bit. Okay, here we go. A regional food hub is a business or organization that actively manages the aggregation, distribution, and marketing of source-identified food products primarily from local regional producers to strengthen their ability to satisfy a wholesale, retail, and institutional demand. Now, to me, that's a long way of saying that these could take a lot of different forms, but the one form, maybe I'm going to focus on the fact that it would be like the distribution form, the distributor form. But distributor form that generally has a mission of supporting small and medium-sized farms that otherwise would not be able to work in this market, in this wholesale market, just given the size, that other distributors may not be interested in them. Some distributors don't have the ability to go farm to pick up product. And food hubs might be that aggregation point where they can aggregate all that food from small to medium-sized farms and maybe work further with other distributors or be actually distributing the product themselves. Some models you may know of or think about, like here in southeastern PA, of course, Common Market. Common Market is a nonprofit organization that is a food distributor specializing in institutional sales. And so they've been having the ability to go farm to farm, but they've also, now that they've grown, been creating these small aggregation points where they can serve multiple farmers, can bring product to, and they can bring one truck. Some other models, you can think of it as like an aggregate CSA model, where maybe it's one organization, but they're working with 10, 15 other farms that they're aggregating product in, and they're working with a community that has purchasing shares just like a CSA. And through all these models, it's keeping that farm identity from the farm to the end user of the food product. So that's another distinction as well. And let's see if we get this to move here. There we go. This is also just to give you an idea of the food hubs that are known in the U.S. that was collected by the USDA. So this is a growing business. This is a growing opportunity. At the Northeast Sustainable Ag Working Group conference this past fall, was attended a session on food hubs with at that website link below here, the National Good Food Network.org, which is a joint operation of the Wallace Center and USDA. If you go to that, you can get more information on food hubs and some resources about food hubs. But they were presenting on how this is growing and looking at them as a business model. And for me, if I put a farmer's hat on, I'm looking at it as a business opportunity. They were able to demonstrate that they are growing businesses. They are, for the most part, profitable businesses, which is interesting in the fact that most of them are less than 5 years old as a business. So to be even though small profit, that they're nonetheless profitable within 5 years, which is difficult for any small business to do that within 5 years. It's so it's something to consider and something to keep an eye on, and something that could be really, really important. That is really, really important for the local food movement, and allowing that food that we're producing to get to a wider audience and to some of our schools and institutions. So just some tips. I want to give you like 5 tips. That this comes from my friend Matt LaRue out of Cornell Cooperative Extension, that he talks about in creating a successful wholesale market relationship. So making the connection is the first thing, and that could be through a call. If we're making a call, we have to find out who is the decision maker, that is the person that's working with those farms to see if they're interested in your product or not. We need a description of your farm and your products. I'm going to ask for an appointment to see that person, and when we make that appointment, we want to bring samples. The idea that if we're going to call, we're going to describe what our farm is and what the products we're offering. We're kind of giving them to know right off the bat what we have that may be of use for their business, and not wasting their time as well. Asking them a bunch of questions about, well, what can they use? What would you like to see? They really just want to know who you are, what do you have? Yes, I can use your product. Sure, let's make an appointment. We want to define our expectations. We want to understand what the delivery schedule is. How frequently is the ordering? How does the ordering come about? Is it going to be a call every Monday or something like that? What's the billing cycle that we talked about? Is that going to work for you and your business? And the payment along with that. How soon can we expect payment from the billing in the billing cycle? What kind of quantities are we looking at a regular basis? And then along with that, what are the packing standards for the products? Establish schedules. How and when to place orders. When do they prefer the delivery? What is the order schedule? We need to make clear any limitations that we have in our business. Remember, farms are kind of resource limited. We're limited in time and resources, so chances are there might be limitations that we don't want to jeopardize that relationship if they don't know about. And be on time. Always, always be on time. Pricing and payment, consistent price, or is it fluctuating? Is the pricing clear? Are the payment terms clear? And here again, the billing and payment schedule. We want to know all that. And maybe even being partners in promotion. Can we provide them with farm literature that they can use to promote your product, so to continue that consistency in ordering from their part of our products? Do you ever do any in-store appearances or promotion that maybe we'd be willing to participate in? Or can we help educate the sales team about our products? And most effective of all, can we arrange a tour for their staff to come tour our farm, so they get a really hands-on feel about envisioning our farm and our products when they're promoting that products to their customers. So that's what I have, and like I said, it's just really kind of skimming the surfaces of opportunities in wholesale marketing. And we can take some questions at the end, but right now I would like to turn it over to Peggy to talk about cooperatives. And I need to relinquish control if I can.
Hello, can you hear me? Not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, Peggy, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see from beginning. Good morning, everybody. My little box is going across my image. I'm going to shrink that down. If there's a question for me, would you just voice it? Because I'm going to remove the box for the moment. Let's see, how do I do that? Okay. So, good morning. I'm from Keystone Development Center. And Keystone Development Center is a very tiny nonprofit organization. We are dedicated to providing technical and research assistance to groups who wish to organize as cooperatives. KDCs are working with emerging and startup and established cooperatives throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, serving over 100 clients since 1999. Our experienced team can support you and your group from development through operations. While we work primarily with agriculture, the model of co-ops is really expanding and goes beyond agriculture. We are funded by the USDA, Rural Development, so primarily our work has been rural, and historically cooperatives have been really utilized by farmers, and so many of our clients are agricultural based, but we are also working with many food co-ops in the cities who are committed to local foods. And so there's a real good relationship between farmer-based co-ops and in rural areas and food co-ops in cities, such as Philadelphia, which has a very strong collection of food co-ops. Some of them have been around for a long time, and some of them are just in the idea stage. We also work with purchasing co-ops, shared services, broadband, energy and utility. And let me just comment on that for a minute and say in rural areas, it was very difficult for people to have access to electricity or broadband or other utilities. And that model of the co-op was utilized to help people who are far, far away from some energy companies to come together as a community and establish a cooperatively owned utility company. And there are many of them in Pennsylvania. Transportation is an emerging area, and in fact there are 2 co-ops that we're currently working with, one in Philadelphia and one in Baltimore, where taxi drivers want to own their own company. That's also an example of worker-owner co-op. And we've also worked with artists and senior housing. These are just some of the sectors that we've worked in. The reasons for business organization are many. And one of the things that's very interesting and unique about co-ops is that people already have their own businesses. They're entrepreneurs. Maybe they have farms and they have their own operation, but they want to take the next level or a distribution model perhaps to their farm that they can then cooperatively own with a group of similar businesses, other farmers. Processing is another example. It could be a group of turkey farmers in south central Pennsylvania at one point heard that their turkey processor was going to be leaving the area, and so they worked together to purchase the processing facility and become the owners, rather than see that important aspect of all of their businesses disappear to move to another region. Marketing and distribution, not everybody wants to have the infrastructure for owning their own trucks and warehouse and staffing, and bringing all the product together from multiple farmers has always been advantageous. You see it with large grain farms or dairy products, who, not everybody can have a facility to that capacity, but the individual farmers can be members and sell to the co-op. Business services is also an aspect, having somebody who's handling the billing or the marketing or phone calls or any other aspect of your business that could be handled by one person for the group of the many, for the benefit of the many involved in that co-op. And most often, a co-op will involve a combination of those types of services. And business structure is an important aspect also because it defines who owns the business. It clarifies who manages the business and how decisions are made, how earnings are distributed. It can also protect personal assets and impact taxation. And the reason, the way you go about deciding what type of business you want is based on the goals and objectives of the participants. And the ownership and governance and risks and rewards are all considerations. There are many times we work with a group of people who would like to come together, but in time they discover that there's really maybe one person within the group who's got more motivation and perhaps has facilities and various other aspects, and the other people want to participate in the market channel, but they don't necessarily want to own it or operate it or invest in it. And so sometimes what looks like a co-op eventually turns out to be a private company that serves the needs of a group of farmers. That's a legitimate form of business, and we will encourage that if it looks like that's the best model. But many times, jointly owning the business is an appropriate option as well. So there are many forms of legal businesses. Typically, farmers are usually sole proprietorship, although I see that changing over the past 5 or so years, where farmers are becoming incorporated in some way, either through partnership or limited liability companies to protect their personal assets. I just have this in here to point out that a cooperative is a legal form of business. There's a very specific set of requirements that need to be fulfilled. You cannot use the word cooperative unless you followed these principles and legal aspects of how distribution, ownership, bylaws, governance structure have to fit the statute of the cooperative business model. Sometimes people want to use the word cooperative, but they're not really a cooperative, and so it's officially illegal to use that term unless you're incorporated as a cooperative. So just a little bit about what makes a cooperative different from other forms of business. A cooperative is owned and controlled by the people who use its services. So the user is the owner, the user has control, and the user gets the benefits. Let's compare that to another type of business, such as produce distributor, a big company that you can sell your product to it, but you don't own it. You don't have any control over the decision making or even really awareness of how money is, where the profits are and what the costs are, and distribution. Any kind of decision making is not yours, but you could benefit by selling to them, but you really don't own it and you cannot have any control. Whereas a cooperatively owned, very similar business, it may feel similar to walk in the door and deliver your box, but you actually are an owner and you can participate in leadership and decision making and have full access to information as well as getting the benefits. So that would be the primary difference between a co-op and another type of business. Is the co-op seeks economic benefit for its members, while the investor-owned business has the objective of making profits for its investors. A cooperative exists to meet the members' needs economically and efficiently. Oftentimes, a co-op will operate at a break-even or maybe slightly above break-even to begin to build up some reserve. But the profits are returned to the users, to the owners, who are the owners and getting the benefit out of the business. They're also getting all the profits. And so, again, looking at the example of a produce distributing company, they're going to want to give the farmer the least amount that the farmer is willing to accept. They're going to get the best price for themselves that they can get on the market, but they keep the profits, as much of the margins as they can get on either side. So there's multiple types of co-ops. I kind of brushed through this a little bit earlier. Consumer co-ops are owned by the people who use the goods or services, such as electricity, housing, telecommunications. Credit unions are a type of consumer co-op as well. Producer co-ops, for example, farmers, craftsmen, artisans, are people who make similar products and collectively market them to improve their income. Worker owners are owned and governed by the employees of the business. Sometimes you'll see that in restaurants, taxi cab companies, or industry. And shared purchasing and shared services are owned and governed by independent business owners or government agencies who band together to enhance their purchasing power. Sometimes you'll see this in municipalities who are sharing sometimes fire or police services, or school districts who maybe provide like the IU services are examples of how school districts are pulling together to share services. CoOps range in size from small storefronts to large Fortune 500 companies. There are about 48,000 co-ops serving 130 million members in the United States. 2 out of every 5 citizens belong to a co-op. We may not often consider it if we are a member of a credit union. Oftentimes people don't realize that's a co-op because it doesn't really appear like you're an owner. So there are some co-ops where you have a lot more power and a lot more say than others where, like REI is a co-op, but I doubt many people feel like they're owners of that business. Worldwide, there are some 750,000 co-ops serving 80 million members. In many ways, they're like any other business, but in other ways, they're very unique. There are principles that are shared internationally that all co-ops uphold. And one of them is one member, one vote. So let's say there's a co-op with 50 farmers, and it could be that one farmer puts all their product into the co-op and they sell something like $100,000 worth of product in a year. And somebody else is in the co-op and sells $10,000, or somebody else sells $1,000. Each of those farmers has one vote. They have equal control and equal say. So it's democracy. The democracy rules over the amount of power that you might have through money or usage of the services. This is in contrast to other corporations where it depends on how many shares you have. You can have more voting power. It's open and non-discriminatory membership as well. Although sometimes typically you have to fit the values of it, or you can't just let anybody in the co-op unless they are also producing similar product or following your guidelines and principles. Members contribute to, democratically control, and have access to the financial resources of the co-op. So it could be that every member has to pay a membership fee, and that's how they gain access to capital for startup purposes. And that's not always an equal amount of money, but those shares don't influence control as much as they influence return on investment. Co-ops are autonomous, independent, and self-help organizations controlled by their members. And what I've seen, one of the things that I really appreciate about co-ops is how much the members support one another and learn from one another. And oftentimes there's a very good sense of camaraderie and the breaking away from the sense of competition amongst your peers. And also, cooperatives work together. Like I mentioned earlier, the food co-ops are doing a lot of purchasing from producer co-ops. And cooperatives share the principle of concern for their communities. For example, a co-op is not going to up and move to another region because they can get a better deal in West Virginia. They're owned by the people who use those services, and so the co-ops are very, very stable because of that. So just a little bit about my story. me and my family were running a produce farm in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, and we had a CSA starting in 1999 with 25 shares. We gradually grew to 125 shares, raising 50 different crops for a 25-week harvest. We offered a lot of community events. We trained a lot of young interns, and we were very, very busy, overwhelmed, and really couldn't figure out how to expand our business because we spent so much time in the field, so much time providing for the needs of our members, and we didn't have any more time in the day to grow and add to our business model. Just doing all the work, all of the hand-holding of our customers, all the marketing, all the distribution, packing, everything. We were really feeling kind of stuck in our ability to grow and expand. So we met together with a group of other farmers. Well, let me say this. We were dealing with the people and the planet, but we were really, really struggling with profit. We just couldn't pull all the pieces together to really be profitable. We were doing all the customer service, sales, bookkeeping, transportation. It was just really out of hand. So we met together with a group of about 15 other farmers and started talking about services that we could share together. And as a result of that, Lancaster Farm Fresh was formed. It was a small group at first, and there's now over 100 farms involved with the co-op. The co-op sells fresh, local produce. It's a very big mix of grass-fed animals and dairy products and small batch value-added products. And the services that they provided for us were distribution. We were able to participate a lot more in wholesale. We continued our CSA, but it became more, I guess, less of a relationship with each individual customer and more of providing a diversity of crops, yet we didn't have to grow 50 different crops 25 weeks out of the year. We didn't have to have 10 or 12 items. We reduced the products that we were personally growing and did a much better job of providing high quality items that we really did well at, and some of our other member farms did better at some other things. We had a professional sales staff. We had refrigerated trucks, very high quality warehouse, and really took a lot of pressure off of us. While growing and expanding our business, we were able to reduce the burdens on ourselves in having to do all those tasks. The co-op provided us with a sales and marketing team, transportation, warehousing, purchasing supplies like boxes at a discount, and all kinds of business support, including record keeping, helping us with planning, product development, farmer education. Overall, it was so much more efficient. We shared costs, and we all had greater profits. So there's many parts of the local food system where this can be applied, and we're hearing at KDC, we're hearing more and more ideas about where people might want to utilize the co-op model. Some of the co-ops that we've worked with include the Central PA Marketing Co-op, Chester County Cheese Artisans, Community Oasis at Bird in Hand, Friends and Farmers Co-op, which is a combination of farmers and consumers in Penn State area, Heritage Shellfish Cooperative in South Jersey, Jackson Meadows Country Farmers Market, Keystone Beef Marketing Network, and the list goes on. If you look at our website, you can see many of these co-ops and links to their websites to learn more about them. Overall, the advantage of being in a co-op is it improves your marketing power, it reduces your costs, it improves your purchasing power, and then if you had been selling through other means, now you have a better idea of transparency and awareness, and it's very empowering. You have control over your own business and business decisions, expanded marketing opportunities, and one of the things that we really saw was the improvement in product quality and an increase to our income. The key ingredients to finding a group of people willing and able to work together is a shared conviction that this is an appropriate form of business. And you also have to have a mutual need. The group has to have a shared vision of a committed, of an affinity for one another, that working together is the best way to meet their needs. It brings out the talents and energies of a group, and oftentimes different people bring different assets to the table, whether that's physical assets like a warehouse or trucks, or other assets like skills or products. A core leadership team has to be identified who work as a steering committee and eventually become the board of directors. And those people guide the direction and the development of a co-op. And we've helped you identify leaders who can work with you. Our team, which you can learn more about on our website. We also have a lawyer, and we help cover some of those legal costs of incorporation and helping with the writing of bylaws. We also have an accountant that we work with because the accounting principles of co-ops are complex. But we also try to work close, like this man here in the white hat is an extension agent who works very closely with us on the clams and oyster co-ops, and other kinds of community leaders who can assist in the development of your co-op. Co-ops have to have articles of incorporation and bylaws. They have responsibility for management and become the board of directors. The liability of its owners is really just the investment that you have in the co-op, the money that you put in. So there's a buffer to protect your personal assets. The taxes of the co-op are passed on to the shareholders or the members, so the co-op is not double taxed. And the existence is tied to its member owners, and so if the co-op can disband when the members disband. One of the things I think is also good about a co-op model is you may start off small, like Lancaster Farm Fresh did, 15, and then gradually more people came in. They also had the ability to be owners, where sometimes you may form a smaller company like an LLC, and you may have 3 owners, and later you want to grow and you bring in 10 other people. Well, they're not owners. They can use your services, but they can never be owners. So a co-op allows for that kind of flexibility of some people who come in later and some people who may leave as they retire and move on for other reasons. Capital is raised by direct contributions of the members, or you can do various things like retained earnings. So maybe a percentage of sales, like 1% of every sale, or 5 cents on every case. And they can also borrow money as a co-op, either borrow from members or borrow from the bank. And the development process would involve, if you're working with us, contacting us. We have on our website, we have a link that you can click on and kind of describe what you're looking for, and we will respond to that. Once you've identified a group of people who want to meet with us and talk with us, we discuss what your mission is, and we can provide some feasibility studies business plan, leadership development, help you with capitalization, and develop your marketing and management strategy. So the steering committee guides this development process. We help you through the process of learning how to organize meetings, keep minutes, conducting in the feasibility, and oversee the incorporation process. Again, we help you with the development of your bylaws, and we help you establish the first board of directors. We provide feasibility, business planning, and organizational development. This whole presentation is included in the attachments, or will be, if you want to look at it later, but much of this information is also on our website, where we have, I think, a lot of good resources on there for self-study. If you want to reach out to me, you can find my contact information on our website, www.kdc.coop. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Peggy, and thanks, Brian. I think we'll move into the question and answer portion of the presentation now. But maybe right before we do that, Brian, I wasn't sure if you had anything that you wanted to point out regarding the handouts that we've provided. Anything there specifically you may want to point out about those?
So yes, there's just some tip sheets that I had. If you're thinking about doing an auction, there's a nice tip sheet from, I think it's University of Kentucky, on some things to consider if you're thinking about going to the auction, and also working with a distributor. The third thing down there, the guide to marketing channel selection, is a good overall for regardless of your marketing channels. It kind of covers them all. Here again, it's by Matt LaRue from Cornell. Has put together a really nice guide, and also an exercise in there on how to assess your marketing channels, which I think gets to, it was one of the early questions here. Someone had asked about, where is it? How does a farm assess the profitability of a wholesale market channel? I think you have to assess it the same way you assess any, hopefully the way you assess any of your marketing channels. It's really just the same way of, of course, starting out with what your cost of production is, and then trying to evaluate what all is involved in that marketing channel. What are the risks involved in it? What's the labor involved in it? What's the potential to move product and the volume of the product, and also what's the potential for profitability in that? But you would treat it the same way as you treat any of your marketing channels.
Okay. So Tracy has been compiling a lot of the questions that have been coming in, and I think she's just going to run through those so Peggy and Brian can address them. So.
Okay, the first two are sort of related here, and both you might be able to answer these. And the first one is, do you think that the market is changing from cheap food to quality food? And do you agree that people are willing to pay more for local organic food than they are processed and transported food?
So I guess I'll go first. My take is that I think there's a growing consumer demand for more choices in food, to have arguably better choices in food. I don't see that it's replacing cheaper food when I look at any numbers that say the USDA or anybody else puts out, but we do see the local food market still growing in market share, and so it's just I think a consumer wants more variety. What was the second part of that, Tracy? I'm sorry.
And are people willing to pay more for local than they are processed and transported?
Yes. Yes, and that's been proven out. But there's a group called the Hartman Group that studies that, particularly this sector of food sales for the food retail businesses, and they continually release reports that say this is still a growing sector, and people are willing to pay more for it. Yeah.
You had spoken a little bit about food hubs, and we had one question about, do we have a food hub in southwestern Pennsylvania? So perhaps you could share a little bit more about what you know about food hubs in Pennsylvania?
Yes, but first I didn't know if Peggy had anything to add to that first two questions.
I would just comment on the quality has really changed over time from when we first got in, and I'm sure you see the same thing, Brian, at the auctions and other settings. When we first got into CSAs, we didn't really have the same quality standards. Like, people would be so happy just to get local and buy directly from a farm. Now I believe they really want high quality, and we have to uphold those standards of holding and washing, and the food chain from field to consumer has got to be held at a steady temperature, has got to be boxed in a clean box, and those things were not true when we first got started. That has evolved.
That's a really good point. I think Tracy, to the other question about food hub in southwestern PA, was it?
Yes.
And I don't know that area of the state as well as I would like to, but East End CoOp comes to mind. Heck, Michelle probably knows more than I do. That's your neighborhood. But I mean, so I think of them as you'd say, well, it's a co-op, but it's also a food hub because it is aggregating from many different farms and serving a particular community. So that's why I said, what the actual definition of what a food hub is kind of foggy, because it can be just whatever a particular community needs.
Okay.
Peggy, if you had any observations on some of the work you've seen in that. I mean, arguably some of the co-ops could easily be a food hub.
I feel like we've had we have a really good list of the food hubs that exist in Pennsylvania, and I'm currently seeking it while we're talking. I'll see if I can find it.
Oh, maybe, and I think the USDA is tracking them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to look for that, and if I find it, I'll pull it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, then we have a question while you're looking for that, Peggy. How do you guys feel about free samples and or tasting sessions for potential customers?
Samples are always a great idea. Tasting sessions, I'm not sure really what you mean, if depend in what context. I mean, I can think of, I know some farms that will actually quite happily work with the retailers they work with or distributors work with to, say, do in-store sampling, and find that to be a huge benefit in helping consumers understand, get to know their product, and then purchase on a regular basis at their retail outlet. But sampling is always a good idea.
Okay, Peggy, I think we have a question for you here. They asked, does a co-op mean that participants all share in the successes and the failures collectively?
It's a little vague. I'm not sure what they mean by failures. I'm going to assume that it means economic failure, so that if the co-op has a loss financially, that it would be shared by the group. If that's not really the question, please say so. But the risk, again, is how much you put into the co-op. if you're putting in a large chunk of money and there's some kind of loss, I really can't think of a good example. And so I think the question, if you can clarify, I may be a little bit better at answering it.
Okay, while hopefully they are typing in their question again, I have another one for you. What would you say are the biggest challenges in setting up a co-op?
I would say the biggest challenges are getting a group of people who can agree. It means really it's a big commitment, working together. Giving up autonomy is one of the things that people don't want to do. For example, I think one of the things that made Lancaster Farm Fresh so successful is they have a do not compete agreement, and so all co-op members turned in all of their customers to the co-op. And that means, like, some people say, well, I have had that customer for 10 years and I don't really want to turn it in. We just want new customers. I've seen that happen time and time again. And nobody will turn in their customers. Nobody will find new customers. If I find a new customer, it's my new customer. I don't know how they think the customers are going to come if they're not putting everything on the table. I think that's been, to me, the biggest barrier. It's about trust. It's about giving up. And there was really, in my case, I would say there was no reason to hang on to any customers, because I'm not going to be driving down to Philadelphia with my pickup truck with a few items in it if the co-op can service those needs directly for me. That was the whole purpose, is to take away those responsibilities from me. And so to give up all of our customers was a logical thing to do. I do have the Food Hub list if you want to see it. I'll just tell you what they have here. And this is the USDA. I believe that we have a larger list of co-ops. I mean, Food Hub in Pennsylvania than this. Show my screen. This is the list that is being put out by USDA. So this is a couple of years ago. It's almost 5 years ago. So perhaps they have they probably have a better list. Tuscarora Organic Growers, Lancaster Farm Fresh, Groundwork Farms, which I'm not even sure what that is. Common Market, Fair Food Philly, Weaver's Way, and Penn's Corner. So yeah, I don't believe that's really what we're seeing. I think that you'll find a better list on KDC's website than this. I also want to mention that we service 4 states: Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland.
Okay, we have another question here. Does a co-op require USDA certification of food items provided? For example, do eggs sold in a co-op require USDA processing to be legally sold there?
The answer is, if you're going to be distributing product, you may as well be following the law. You can't get around the law just because you have the word co-op. However, let me point out that there is an advantage to being in a co-op right now with the food safety regulations in regards to produce only. If your facility is not processing product, but only handling, including packing and distributing, and it's owned by farmers, it does not need to be considered a facility. And so it's considered an on-farm activity, and is that therefore you don't have to follow HACCP. But let me also caution to say, when we started Lancaster Farm Fresh, one of the things that was very clear was that our standards had to be higher than they ever were before. Because if one person in the co-op does something unsafe, they could hurt not just their own farm, but everybody in the co-op. And we also wanted to present high quality standards and not hide behind anything, and do the very best that we could. So high quality standards and following, going beyond the expectation, I think made that co-op strong.
Okay, we also have a question about delivery cost and perishability. Distributed delivery network or node modules have the advantage of being incredibly cost-effective for food hubs. Are there examples of farm-to-table companies doing this, like Farmago operating in Pennsylvania?
Farmigo?
Farmigo, sorry.
Yeah. The models that I've seen have the problem they have stand how difficult it is to move food, and so they're still getting over distribution issues, and therefore profitability's been an issue. Maybe Peggy's seen some models that work pretty well, but I'm thinking specifically the online ordering farm to table stuff. Where they really struggled is they don't understand how difficult it is to move food.
Okay.
If I'm understanding the question correctly, I'm just stuck on the Farmigo model. Where someone places an online order, and then the online company is the one that's responsible for moving it around. If we're talking about kind of coordinating the aggregation of stuff, it's hard to beat the red tomato model, of not owning trucks or warehouses but just coordinating with existing infrastructure that's already in place and are willing to work with us. Seems to work really well. And it's working well in our area. Some of the farms that they're working with in Pennsylvania and New Jersey seem to be, at least when I talk to those farmers, they're very happy with that relationship, that they had the logistics down.
Okay, we have another question about wholesaling. What would be the first steps I should take when developing a plan to approach a wholesaler?
I guess it's kind of like your elevator pitch, right? Everybody's time is precious, and we do like to tell our own story, and we can be pretty good at it. But what is the gist of that's what I think in those 5 steps that I had laid out that Matt LaRue's book in developing a wholesale relationship. It is a matter of what is the problem we're solving potentially for that customer, and maybe it's a specialty product that they may be interested in. If you're getting to the person who makes those decisions on a phone call and say, I'm so and so, this is our farm, this is what we're offering. Can your business use this product? Do you have customers who want this product? And maybe we have a very high quality product, and then getting that appointment and bringing that sample to them so they can see the quality of the product.
Okay, Peggy, we have a question here. Someone asks, are there statistics that demonstrate the impact of food hubs versus farm direct models on profitability of farms?
I imagine there are statistics. I haven't seen it. I haven't really looked at that. Brian, are you aware of anybody who's been looking at that?
I would think the Wallace Center that link that I had put up, I think towards the end, at least in the 2 Food Hub slides I had that link for the National Good Food Network.
Yeah, I'm wondering, do they look at the impact on the individual farm or just the cost of
I think they're looking at
operating the hub?
Yeah, I think they're looking at the Food Hub numbers in general, but so I'm not sure that the farm cost, comparison is in there.
I can just tell you on a personal note, and you can probably look at your own operation, how much money you don't even account for your own time for driving, your own time for sales and marketing or billing and all of those things. I imagine it would be very difficult because people don't really keep track of it like that. But we suddenly had more time on our hands to focus on growing food rather than running around trying to deliver it, for example. If you just look at that piece, the cost of delivery for us to drive 1 truck and 1 person being gone to do that, and the volume of product that was moving on the vehicle versus having the co-op come and pick it up on our farm, take it to a warehouse, the efficiency of a full refrigerated truck delivering to customers, the customer's interest in buying from somebody who is actually in the office versus trying to reach a farmer out in the field who's on a tractor. It just changed and professionalized everything. The cost of all of that, it was probably somewhere between 25 and 30% of the sale price, if that helps you.
Okay, we have a question here. Are co-ops and food hubs 501c3 nonprofits?
Not all of them. I mean, some food hubs are, some are for profit. I think like Red Tomato and Common Market are nonprofit, but there's others that are for-profit entities.
And as for co-ops, they're not a 501c3, but a co-op can operate at cost and not be a profit-making entity because they're turning the profits back to its members and therefore are not taxed. But it's not a 501c3 in terms of the mission. The 501c3 has to have a mission, more like you'll see with Common Market.
Okay.
Does that clarify?
If it doesn't, feel free to type in questions as we go along here. Our next question is there opportunity for Uber-like delivery services for online ordering?
Well, there is, and like I said, that logistics is really hard to do. It is really hard to do. You could look up the story of Good Eggs that didn't figure it out. They also grew rather rapidly, and then ultimately had to answer to their investors just as rapidly. But sure, the opportunities are always there, but can we do logistics, which is going to be the hardest thing to do.
And I would also caution about liability. We're talking about moving food products, and if you're going to move food products, you want to move them in legitimate, clean vehicles that are holding a certain temperature, that the driver has a good, clean driving record, that there have been way too many things that have happened that wouldn't be worth the risk of getting around having a legitimate distribution system, being on time, somebody that you can count on. There's so many different issues.
Okay, we have a question here. What marketing route other than direct sales to consumers at markets would you suggest for a small farmer who's not yet USDA inspected but is producing a large quantity of an item and would like to be able to move the product in order to bring in needed income so that a USDA inspected facility can be completed?
So I guess it depends on what that product is and what the facility requirements are. If it is indeed have to be a USDA inspected product to go into the marketplace, is there facilities that we can rent that would meet those guidelines in the short term as we're building that end of the business? But ultimately, if you're thinking about, if we're talking about a wholesale channel to get out, who would move that product for us and what are their requirements? Generally, they know inside and out what has to be done, and it could be worth a conversation for them. Just stating just what you did here. This is a product we produce. We can produce a lot of. We produce it very well. But what do you require for us to be able to bring that product to you?
Okay, we have one for Peggy. Is there a geographical limit for successful co-ops, such as a 100-mile radius versus a 250-mile radius?
Again, it's a little vague, hard to answer. I guess it depends on the product, depends on your market. For example, Tuscarora Organic Growers is located in a very rural part of central Pennsylvania. They deliver down to Washington, D.C. So you want to go where the market is. The economy of scale, bringing all those farmers' products together and having a full truck made it possible to go to a longer distance. I hope that that illustrates to satisfy your answer.
Peggy, arguably, correct me if I'm wrong, Lancaster Farm Fresh probably, you could say, grew its radius as it grew in members. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement to make?
I believe that they first started in Philadelphia and a little bit of New York City, gradually grew down into Baltimore, Maryland, D.C., started expanding further into the Northeast. So yeah, I think it was a gradual process.
I think that brings us to the end of the questions that we currently have. Is that correct, Tracy?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank Peggy and Brian again for this presentation. I'll just do a short plug again that we do have 3 other webinars coming up. One is actually with Brian Moyer later on this week on Friday. It was actually rescheduled from last week. It's on Agricultural Marketing 101. So if anyone's interested in that, please go to our website and you can find the link to register. And once again, at the end of the webinar, we'll be sending out an email with a link to a survey, and we would appreciate your feedback about this presentation and how we did on that survey. And then within the next day or two, we will also send out a link to the presentation recording and all the attachments that were available today. So unless there's anything else, on behalf of everyone here, thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.